Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it. We'll talk about it inside. Scrappers, Tom from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, July 26th, 2023, and this is our weekly report, so thanks for tuning in, and thanks so many of you for reporting your prices. We are seeing so many prices reported across the United States and Canada for items like bare bright and light iron and your common grades of scrap, and we'll pull some of those prices up, and we're just going to jump right into some of the prices that you are reporting for free through your Androids, through your iPhones, on the apps, online as well. And let's just jump right into bare bright copper. In the last few days, we've seen the market starting to come down a little bit, and this isn't a huge surprise, but I will give you a little positive news off of this. What we saw about 2 weeks ago was a dip in the markets, and that's what is reflected in some of these reported prices that we saw. When we saw the price going down a few weeks ago, it normally will be reported down for the next few weeks. Why is that? Scrap yards sell their scrap as they get it, and some scrap yards pre-sell scrap based on their normal flows. So when we saw the markets go down a couple of weeks ago, we did start to see prices going down. Now, here's the good news. While the national averages may be down, they will be going up, and that's why you tune in every week. In the last week and a half, we've seen copper prices jump about 15, 16 cents. Now, this morning, prices are down a few cents a pound, but we're starting to see bare bright copper prices jumping to the 330, 340 range in many parts of the country. Now, when we're talking about some of these copper prices, I've been talking about this EV thing for a really long time. So anytime I get an EV article that I can read and learn more about, I do exactly that. I kind of jump right into it. So here's what I've read recently. And while it's still going to be strong for scrap and for copper markets, it does take a little bit away, and I'll tell you why. Copper is going to be used in electric vehicles so much more than regular combustible gas engines for many reasons. One, so much more wiring. Think about an electric vehicle kind of as a car in a robot's body, if you will. You have electric motors now powering the tires. You have more wiring going throughout, connecting the different cells of the battery. You have the car acting more as a computer, so you have a bigger screen, wiring behind. Now, why is it important to talk about? Well, as more electrification happens, automakers are going to do what? Keep their costs down. And what we're starting to see and read is how automakers can eliminate 10 to 20% of the copper that's inside these electric vehicles. Now, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I believe it's around 160 pounds of copper is in each electric vehicle on average right now. They're trying to bring that down because less copper going in means less expense. And it goes from there, 180 pounds, 160, 180 pounds of copper going to electric vehicles compared to 70 or 80 pounds in a regular gas engine for a big car, 30 pounds for a regular car that you may see. Oh, you have about 30 pounds on average for a regular combustible engine. So 5 to 6 times the amounts going into electric vehicles. What automakers are starting to do is experiment like the electrical field did years ago with aluminum. They're trying to use aluminum windings in a lot of the electric motors that power the different vehicles. They're trying to the wheels inside the vehicles, and they're even experimenting using aluminum wiring opposed to copper wiring. Now, long term, even if they get the number down to 120 pounds per vehicle of copper, that's still 4 times regular amounts. So demand for copper is going to continue to be there, but it's going to lessen as technology increases and new options come into play. So what are we seeing with the copper markets this week? We did see a bit of an uptick, and let's talk about why that uptick is happening. Today or tomorrow, the Chinese are going to be releasing, if they're going to be injecting, a stimulus into their economy. Now, for years, the Chinese have wanted about 5% year over year growth. Now, that's a really great goal, but it's very optimistic, but they've been hitting it for many years. Now, some people think that their numbers may be inflated because who's going to check and balance them? But what they're seeing the last few months is a slowdown, really the last year, and that was because they hung on to some of their COVID policies longer. They're seeing more of a 2 to 3% growth. So the Chinese are now looking at putting a stimulus into the economy. Having a stimulus pushed into the economy is going to put more money out there for reinvestments, for products and goods. If we see that happen, I do expect there to be an immediate uptick in the copper prices. Do I expect it to stay? Probably not, because what we're seeing nowadays is more bursts of news coming out there, being short-lived and not really staying for a long period of time, because there's just so much worldwide news nowadays. You have one thing happen and it's really hitting investors and scrappers in the wallet when it comes to the copper prices. So do I expect a quick burst if the Chinese have a stimulus package, kind of put out there? Absolutely. But if they do not come out with the stimulus package, I also expect about a 20-cent decline happening in the coming days. So if you're looking to these weekly reports on what you should do, I still recommend selling some of your copper, because I think that we're still at very strong levels, and the levels we saw a year and a half ago of $4.40 a pound trading, we're at $3.88 right now. I don't see a quick 50-cent uptick, especially the second half of this year, as people are still figuring things out. Now, we always talk about energy, oil, things like that, and we're going to have another podcast coming out and another video in the next few days with our economist, Mark, talking about different energy prices and how they're going to be affecting the scrap markets. So you'll be able to learn more in the coming days and weeks about what's happening in the energy markets that could affect some of these scrap prices. So it'll be interesting for you to see what's going on with those markets. Now let's talk about some other markets. Aluminum prices, right? I like to do the ABCs of scrap: aluminum, brass, copper, and steel, and I try to hit on those every week. The aluminum markets right now, very weak. We're not seeing strong growth, strong demand, even though aluminum is being used more and more inside of everything, from cars to watches to phones to electronics. But the demand and pricing has continually decreased. And some people were talking about this, and they were talking about the amount of money that was pushed into the US economy and the world economy the last 3 years. And what's happened is, while people are used to prices, mentally there hasn't been a switch that has flipped properly, because some of these prices, while they're higher than they were a few years ago, they're only higher because there's more money in the markets and things cost more and prices kind of got inflated themselves. That includes scrap. So aluminum prices for like sheet aluminum, 40 cents a pound right now. We've seen that continually decreasing over the last few weeks. You can see some of the prices posted here. A lot of those markets are in the 30 to 40 cent range. Now, in reality, sheet aluminum, that's probably where it is right now, because it's a dirty product. You think about something like an aluminum copper coil or an ACR, that's aluminum mixed with copper. The only reason that we've seen a little bit of an uptick there is because the copper prices have been strong. But if you take away all of the money that was created from the stimulus over 2020, 2021, and then going into 2022, these prices are probably inflated, I don't know, 15 to 20%. Now, don't hold me to that number, but the basis is there, and we are seeing markets weakening because the dynamic growth that we saw from the rebound of COVID is really slowing itself down. While we're seeing wage growth happening, right? Scrappers are making more money on paper, the dollar amounts. When you put inflation into the mix, they're actually making the same, if not a little less. And that's happening throughout all industries. Could be hotels, travel, equipment sales, things are starting to slow down, even though there's a backlog of different purchases and equipment out there. So just another thing to kind of think about. So aluminum, brass, copper, brass prices really strong. If we check out some of the reported yellow brass prices over the last week or so, we're going to start to see some really nice prices being posted out there. We're seeing a national average right around $1.98 right now. That's up slightly over the last few weeks. So you can see some of these reported prices, $2, $1.77, $2.05. These are really nice market prices that we're seeing right now for yellow brass. Those prices are going to continue to stay strong. And some cheaper grades like brass shells or brass radiators are slightly down. Brass shells, $1.82. Brass turnings, $1.90. Dirty brass, $1.44. Red brass, which would be bronze or comp, $2.30. Some nice markets there, and that's just because prices for copper have been strong as well. What else is going on in the markets? Well, why don't we talk about catalytic converters, right? We always talk about cats. We have started to see a bit of resuscitation in the cat industry. Even as more laws are coming out throughout the country, we're seeing more buyers, tightening their margins and pushing more prices out. RRCats.com, we've seen the average OEM catalytic converter price climb to about $84, $85 per cat. Is that as high as we'd like it to be? Well, of course not. But the demand right now is continuing to wane. And one of the things that I look at in the catalytic converter markets is where the markets are going. What's the long-term goal here as electrification takes place? What's going to happen to some of these platinum, palladium, and rhodium, these PGM metals? Where are they going to go? We're not seeing huge growth, and we're not seeing new needs for them. So unless you start to hear countries like India saying that they're going to give each driver $5,000 to buy a car, we're not going to see massive growth demand for catalytic converters, and that's okay. It just is what it is right now. But RRCats.com continuing to provide free quotes, 10-day price locks, meaning you get a quote on day one. You have 10 business days to be able to send that in, and as long as it's an OEM cat, you get free shipping on that. We have a couple of promotions right now, so check out rrcats.com where you can get a couple of extra dollars this month and in the coming months, free t-shirts, hats, things like that. Other markets, we had a couple interesting questions over the last few months about Ukraine and about the scrap that's being produced from the damage that's being caused in Ukraine, whether it's buildings collapsing, tanks being blown up, etc. And we're going to have another video coming out in the coming days talking about the scrap metal in Ukraine, what's going to be happening with it, and how it's kind of been there's a program that's being put into place. So please check that video out in the coming days to see what's going on there. Other markets right now, nickel prices, they had a big 5% uptick yesterday. We saw $22,000 per ton affecting the stainless steel prices. But I read another article talking about the demand of stainless steel, and that is continuing to go down. Stainless, while it's a very strong metal, if we can pull up some of the reported prices for stainless, it's a really strong metal that allows less corrosion, high volatility, high heat withstanding, no rust if it's a 303, 304, 316. But what we're seeing right now is a 27 cent a pound stainless national average. And even though nickel prices are fluctuating, that has a lot to do with the electric vehicle market, as more auto manufacturers are using things like nickel in their batteries opposed to lithium because it's cheaper. But we're seeing these big market swings where yesterday we saw a 5% increase. This morning I saw 2.5% decrease. So we're seeing that affecting the stainless markets, and automakers and large equipment manufacturers, they're not using stainless in a lot of their items. You think about where you get stainless steel from: sinks, grills, pots and pans, some medical pipes or chemical pipes may use them. But the increased use compared to aluminum, there is not an increased use. There's a decreased use, and we're just seeing low prices for stainless steel, and I expect that to happen for the foreseeable future. On top of that, it's really hard for people to process at scrap yards. And as labor prices has risen, equipment prices have risen, and fuel prices for like plasma cutters or even shears has risen, the wear and tear is really taking a toll in the stainless markets. And I remember a few years ago, stainless being 80, 90 cents. I just don't see that happening anytime soon, unless, again, we need India. India, in my personal opinion, is the key to the markets having a huge increase in the coming years, with the most people in the world without having an investment in their own economy. I just don't see a lot of really positive things happening on the stainless front, as well as many of the other metals, aluminum, brass, copper, and steel. So scrappers, today is Wednesday, July 27th, 2023. We appreciate you tuning in. Ask us any questions so we can make videos on them. Check out some of the videos that we have in the coming weeks about Ukraine scrap, energy prices affecting the scrap markets, and anything else you want us to talk about, let us know. Until next week, I'll scrap you later. Thanks for checking out this scrap video. For more exclusive scrap video content, please become a YouTube member of our channel today. Thank you, and I'll scrap you later.